Hi, I'm here with Brian and Brittany. I'm Sid Brittany, co-founder and CEO at GitLab, and we're going to talk about the value of equity packages. I'm going to talk about looking into the future. Brian is going to discuss expectations and valuation, and Brittany will show our compensation calculator. I think the number one conversation that I have about equity is about it being in the future. That makes it hard. Something today, it's something in the future. And that means that you have to kind of have an expectation about what the company is going to do. Typically, an equity package we grant at GitLab vests over 4 years, and sometimes with a 1-year cliff, and then it vests monthly. That means that what matters is where you're going to end up over 4 years. And that means it's not about the current value of a package as much as it's about where is it going to be in 4 years. So if you do calculations on an equity package, think where the company is going to be in 4 years. You think that there's a percentage odds that it will go to zero. You should factor that in. There's also a percentage odds that it will do that will be much bigger than it is today. You should factor that in. So kind of make an assessment. Where do you think GitLab will be? How much revenue will it be doing? How will it be valued? And what is the valuation of the company? How much stock are you getting? There will be some dilution over time as we onboard more team members and give out more stock and possibly sell stock to investors. And then do your calculations based on that. The compensation calculator helps with that. So it's really important to not just look at like what is the equity granted today. That matters too. Like what's the dollar value, but play a scenario. What do you think is most likely to happen, and what is that going to be worth? And then take that into consideration as you look at the entire package. You're going to get cash comps, or you're going to have base comps. Sometimes you get commission, sometimes you get a bonus. And then equity is also part of that, a part that can be zero, that can be a lot, depending on how the company does and whether you make it to your cliff, for example. But it's in startups, it's a very significant part of the compensation. It's been very significant to our team members so far. And what we're trying to do at the company is become more successful so that it will do well in the future. There's no guarantees, but that's not an excuse not to do the calculations and work with the different scenarios. So that's what I would ask of everyone. Like, do your calculations, and there's not one answer. It's going to be a range. It could end up all the way from zero to a lot. That's the uncertainty. That's why we also do a base salary. That's a thing that's guaranteed. But so far, this has been a more meaningful component of people's compensation. Brian?
Thanks, Sid. I appreciate that. I wanted to really touch on 3 different areas. One would be transparency. Second would be 409A. And the third would be the recent tender offer that we did for our team members just before year end. So one on transparency, I get a lot of questions from potential team members on what does this mean to me? The great thing is GitLab has built this really awesome tool to allow people to go on and see how the stock has trended over time and to put in various scenarios that you're alluding to. And so I think the transparency of the company to allow that to happen is really awesome. The second thing I get asked about is what is the value of the stock and when will I be granted my stock and how does the 409A work? We do our 409A valuation every quarter, and the options and the fair value of the stock is approved at our board meeting on a quarterly basis. And so if you join after the board meeting, your stock will be granted at the next board meeting based on the fair market value determined by the 409A valuation. And the 409A valuation is really dependent on a number of different items. It's peer comps, how the company's doing, where we think the company is going to go and so forth. And they use several different valuation methodologies to come up with the fair market value price. The last thing I'll talk about is the tender offer that we just completed for current and former team members to sell a portion of their equity. And we raised approximately $200 million at just north of a $6 billion valuation. And there was a lot of really top tier investors who bought into GitLab after doing very extensive due diligence on the company. And these firms, typically when they invest their money, they aren't doing this sort of as a pro bono thing where they're not expecting a return. If a fund typically pays out in 5 to 7 years, if it returns 15% per year for 7 years, the fund will do 2.7 times what they put in. And so if you look at the stock price that we sold the shares for, one potential outcome at a 15% return for the next 7 years would be 2.7 times that amount. As Sid alluded to, number could be higher or it could be lower, but that should give you some kind of basis for when you're running the valuation scenarios to think about. Brittany, would you like to take us through the calculator?
Absolutely. Let me quickly share my screen. So here's a visual of our compensation calculator. We have our salary calculator component, which will outline cash compensation, our stock options component, which is what we're discussing today, as well as our benefits and remote work calculator. So if we focus on the stock options portion, we can enter in the number of options that is presented. For each role, if you fill it into the calculator above here, it will also outline that standard amount that we offer for the specific job that you may be a new hire for, potentially, you can see the difference in promotion as well. You can pick the common strike price down here based on the date in which this was approved by the board. So if this was somebody that was hired, for example, in December, and this was approved by the board in the most recent meeting, you can have this 16.71 common strike price, which is then taken into account as the cost to exercise compared to the preferred price in each of these valuations. Preferred price meaning the total valuation, what you could sell this for in the open market if we were a public company, as an example. So this goes through all the different scenarios that Sid outlined, taking into account your in the money value or your gain, which is shares times price minus common price. And so you can see the difference, this would be, as Brian was referring to, the 2020 secondary price that we had and what this number of options would have as gain, as well as, if the price is increasing over time, as well as if the company or the price decreases over time. So looking through these different valuations, adding in what your common stock price is, and then being able to analyze these on a case-by-case basis for, different methodologies. There's also other, variations in total valuation. So we're very open to feedback on adding in additional valuations or iterating on how this is presented. So if you have any feedback, please feel free to also reach out to Total Rewards, and we're happy to review. And I just want to take the time to thank Sid and Brian for walking us through this. We hope this tool is really valuable to team members to be able to understand the potential value of our stock options as part of your overall Total Rewards package.
You're very welcome. Thank you.